Hi, folks. My name is Girish, Bali, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today, we're going to talk about relationships, healthy relationships, essence of healthy relationships. Those are the words that we'll be using today. And why is this so important about relationships? Well, think about it, right? We have busy lives, we have boring lives, and we have interesting lives, right? Now it's up to you how to make that essence alive again and real again. And that's what this whole thing is all about. And this person I spoke to maybe a couple of months back, maybe a few weeks back, and now we're chatting again, just like we're friends. And today her name is Harmony, and she's an amazing person, great person. You should get in touch with her through her emails and social medias and whatever. But contact her and find out what her essence is when it comes to relationships. So Harmony, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much. I loved listening to what you were saying there about relationships, so important, an essential part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for that. And before we start the essence, the healthiness of the relationships and all the three examples that I gave earlier, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
For me, Back to Basics is really about coming back home to the truth of who we are.
Hmm.
I think that people complicate relationships by mapping out their desires and their pain and their wounds onto their partners and to the people in their life, and can actually create a lot of conflict in that way. And when we come back to ourselves and begin by creating a deep relationship with ourselves, all of our relationships can flourish.
Yeah. Thank you again, Harmony, for coming here, and thank you for answering that question. Uh, Definitely an honor. Harmony, let me ask you this. You just said it just now, right? Is it really that weird when it comes to relationships, and is it really that complicated, or is it kind of simple?
I honestly think it's very simple and that the human mind complicates it beyond what's necessary.
Yeah.
I think that when we haven't quite learned how to even know what it is that we need, how to give voice to what we need, how to extend curiosity and positive regard to the people in our lives, we start creating narratives that can create these entanglement patterns. And we actually start living into those narratives and living into those patterns. And in that, we lose contact with ourselves and with our deeper truth.
Yeah, thank you again, Harmony. So let me give you an example before we get into the details, right? If you and I were in a relationship, why would a third person explain to us that what's wrong with us? Because that's the big, huge thing that people they come up with, right? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like a party, like a counselor like myself.
Or
Yeah,
or even a friend who's outside your circle, right?
mm, yeah. I think that a third party can actually see more clearly the way that each person is sort of blaming each other or leaning too hard on one another, and can see sort of the way that our expectations cause us to live into our own disappointment,
Hmm.
and that a third party is clear and neutral, right? They're regulated. Their nervous system isn't charged or activated
Hmm.
in the dynamic because they're not trying to get their needs met by the other person. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. Thank you again for Harmony for answering that. And before COVID and after COVID, do you think that the reasonings of the relationship has broken, or is it kind of the same? Before we used to, have different issues between relationships and money and everything else, right? Do
Hmm.
you think we're in the same boat now after COVID, or do you think it's kind of the same?
That's such a great question. I have seen so many relationships either thrive or crumble in COVID,
Hmm.
and I think that the stress and the isolation and the unknown created a tremendous amount of uncertainty and nervous system dysregulation into people, and they either you know needed a space from their relationship to to find themselves, or their relationship really thrived because they felt supported by their partner and they knew that they were on the same team, and they really supported one another. So
Hmm.
I saw it go in both directions.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you again, Harmony, for answering that question. How important, and I'm gonna say this word because this is related to the book that I got, or sample of the book that I got from you. How important is being aligned between the two people? Okay.
Mhm.
It could be relationship in boyfriend and girlfriends, boyfriends, or whatever, but
Mhm.
then even after marriage too.
Mhm.
How important is being aligned?
Yeah, so our own internal alignment is the most important,
Hmm,
more so than alignment between two individuals.
hmm,
So when we're in our own alignment, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions are congruent with the truth of who we are.
hmm,
So our heart has a say, as also our mind does, and our will, our power, right, our seat of our action,
mhm,
really comes from connection with the truth of who we are. And when we are fully aligned, the way we engage with the world is actually really honoring of ourselves and other people. Like when we feel empowered, everyone around us feels empowered. When
hmm,
we feel like in pain and small and contracted, that pain comes out sideways to the people closest to us. And so our own alignment is really what nurtures a healthy, clean relationship. However, when two people in partnership with one another have differing desires,
hmm,
which it's very common. One person wants to save money and the other person wants to go on a big vacation. This is something I see often with the couples that I work with.
hmm,
And in that moment, there is an unconscious belief that we need to agree in order to be in relationship.
hmm,
So one person might use a strategy to betray what they want and then align themselves with their partner,
hmm,
right? Or they might argue and try and convince one another that their way is the right way and that we
hmm,
need to do this thing. And that's where the entanglement pattern comes.
hmm,
But if we can look at differing desires as a point of contact and
hmm,
learn how to negotiate wanting different things and being curious about one another and honoring ourselves, we can find solution and really recognize that on the highest level, we all want the same thing. The person who wants to save money ultimately wants comfort and safety and security, and the person who wants to travel also wants to feel the goodness of life. Like ultimately they want the same thing, even though it looks different to them.
hmm, hmm. But Harmony, the way you're explaining it seems like it's very exhausting. It's too much work. So so the reason why I say that is because a lot of people, they just don't want to do that hard work,
Mhm.
and the comparisons or the compromises, right? Uh, those are the big words that the youngsters nowadays, and even my age group, are saying that too. That it's just too much work.
Mhm.
So don't you think a relationship is too much work anyway? So I don't think that should be something to think about. I mean, it should be an automatic thing, or is that not the case?
I see what you're saying. So it's work because it takes conscious awareness. Is that
Exactly.
what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we have a choice. We can either turn on the light of awareness or we can fall asleep to it.
Hmm.
I would say that being asleep to our awareness and following patterns of conflict and pain is ultimately much more work than being aware in the moment and being curious about somebody else and in contact and honoring of our own truth. That when we learn how to navigate those relationships, we ultimately build the foundation of a relationship that is loving and clean and can thrive. And there is 99% less conflict when we do that work in those moments that could potentially be charged.
But then, thank you again, Harmony, for that. Do you think I should
Mhm.
be constantly playing chess to get two steps ahead, or is it better just to be alone because there's just too much work and too many thinking processes happening?
Yeah, so there are more options on the menu than playing chess to get ahead or checking out.
Right.
I would say the only place to get is more in touch with what's right here.
Hmm.
So when I'm talking about navigating conflict, I'm talking about getting more in touch with what's happening inside of me and more in touch with what's happening for my partner because I care about them and I also want them to be happy.
Hmm.
Um, it's not about trying to change them or manipulate them or get them to agree with me. It's really about creating a clean relationship where I can breathe, my husband can breathe,
Hmm.
and we both feel happier, more empowered, and uplifted for having had our relationship.
But then this is more close to, as what you say on your website, as the spiritual alignment, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Instead of anything else. So
Mhm.
is it always fixable when it comes to spiritual alignment, or is it more happiness that it's okay that me and Harmony can break up and not come back again? Because that at the end of the day, we both have to be happy no matter what, right?
Yeah, so I believe that the work in relationships isn't about deciding if we should stay or go. It's
Hmm.
really about focusing on who we're becoming. And
Hmm.
this is what I was saying with how I see back to basics is it's really about our relationship with ourselves.
Hmm.
And if who I'm becoming fits the context of this relationship, then we will be together. And if
Hmm.
who I'm becoming can no longer be in this particular context with you,
Hmm.
then I would leave from the love of my heart, not from a reaction or anger, but
Hmm.
because it's the most loving thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Harmony, for explaining that. And I'm pretty sure other people might be having that same issues and questions, and that's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah.
With the example between you and me being on a relationship, people need to understand examples, otherwise they will not get it. So thank you again for Harmony for explaining that. You're coming out with a book recently, right? And can we talk briefly about that? I mean, it's about alignment, current, right? And explain that, if you don't mind, where the title came from,
Mhm.
or did the situations come in? Can you explain that if you don't mind?
Yeah. So my book that's coming out December 1st is called Align, Living and Loving from the True Self.
Hmm.
And I really developed that book from a combination of my work with clients and what I teach my students who are student therapists.
Hmm.
And what I've learned in my years as a clinician is that people leave themselves and come off center.
Hmm.
And finding their way back home to themselves is actually really simple.
Hmm.
And when we are at home in ourselves, for me, what that means is that vital force, the life force energy that animates us all, is
Hmm.
flowing through us. Life is expressing through us in
Hmm.
alignment with the universe, in alignment with our essence. And when we're identified with our pain and our wounds or our narrative, or we're resisting our body or disconnecting from our body,
Hmm.
we engage with our relationships from this really painful place that will ultimately cause conflict patterns. So the first half of my book is really about the inner journey of
Hmm.
creating a deep connection with our essential self. And
Hmm.
the second half of my book is about how to bring that into relationship, how to find the voice of our true self, how to
Hmm.
speak from our sovereignty, and how to really listen with our whole being to the people in our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again for explaining that. So let me ask you this. Obviously, people have a tendency to look more on the beauty side because that's just how we are and that's just humans are, right? But it seems like we're more spiritual than you actually think that we are. Don't you think so? I mean, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that people's soul's urge guides them more than they recognize.
Hmm.
And that attraction is really like somebody's spirit getting lit up in the presence of somebody else, and I think that there's always a reason for that. I think that attraction is really here to actually reveal deeper parts of ourselves
Hmm.
through our partner's reflection.
But then, Harmony, thank you again for that. But how do you know between a couple that they are soulmates? I mean that's what they say, right, in the movies, and that's what they say in the books, and that's what they say everywhere, all the love stories. But how do we know that they're soulmates? If
Yeah,
there's
I think,
thing.
say that again.
If there's such thing as
If
soulmates.
there's such thing. Yeah, I have a couple answers to that. One is, I think that more importantly than deciding if somebody is a soulmate or not, it's more about how do I and my partner tend to ourselves when we're in a reaction. So
Hmm.
if my nervous system is dysregulated and my attachment wound is blaming my partner for the way that I feel, how can I show up for myself and own that my experience is mine to move through rather than blaming somebody else?
Hmm.
But I will say, just on a personal note, when I met my husband, I had this deep experience that my soul had been looking for him for a
Hmm.
very, very long time.
Hmm.
And everything inside of my system relaxed.
Hmm.
And for the first time in my life, I felt completely safe and empowered and loved.
Hmm.
And it's really a really beautiful experience. So
Hmm.
for me, the relationships that were hard, people might describe those as karmic. There were lessons to learn, there were patterns to shift. And
Hmm.
this relationship that's easy, for me, it feels like a soul connection.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you again for explaining that. Let me give you a small story. There was a couple that I met many years ago, and they celebrated their 50 years, 50 years. Okay,
Wow.
and I asked him a question. I said that what makes the flare happen? What's that spark happens? And he said, you know what? It sounds funny, but he says that he pretends that his wife is dead. It makes him more love more. If we are divorced, what would happen? You know, he wants to make sure that the flare is still there even after when he pretends that she passed away or they had a divorce or they had a separation. That's the only way to make things better in the relationship. Do you think that's a good thought process, or
Well,
is
when I hear
or bad negativity?
that, what I hear is that this person was trying to find a way to really tend to the preciousness that
Hmm,
he felt for his spouse.
hmm,
And I think that there are lots of ways to get there. And it makes sense to me that that would work for him. But I do agree that really appreciating and honoring the preciousness that we feel with our partner is what keeps the love alive. It builds it because we tend to it.
hmm. Yeah, I think the more and more negativity you feel, I think you change back and go into positive reaction, I guess. Uh, Not everyone is the same. I mean, this is just an example of just a one couple that I know. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so thank you again for explaining that. Harmony, I was looking on your website. There's a quiz that you usually give people, right? Can you explain what that thought process is when that quiz was not given, but created? I mean, what really triggered this whole thing?
Yeah, so I created an alignment map, and there's a short quiz that is really intended to serve people in tracking their alignment and where they're off balance from themselves and how to come back to themselves. And that alignment map was really created in response to seeing how my clients would wait for their next session for
Mm,
me to come to find their way back into alignment. And I really wanted to create a tool for people to have access to finding their way back home on their own, back home to themselves on their own as
mm,
a practical lived experience. I believe that alignment is an active process. It's
mm,
not something that we create and achieve and then rest in for the rest of our lives.
mm,
That life can mistune our energy, that we can come off balance when something happens, when our nervous system gets dysregulated, and
mm,
really learning how to actively come back to ourselves is a really fluid process.
mm. Yeah, but Harmony, honestly speaking, a lot of people, they feel that they're going to get scared by taking this quiz because
Mm,
maybe they don't want to see the results, that it's going to be bad or
mm.
good or whatever. What are your thoughts on that part?
Yeah, I think that fear is valid, and I also think that that if somebody is curious, it's likely because they are already sensing that they're off balance.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing in this quiz, or even in my point of view on humanity, quite frankly, that says that there's anything wrong with anybody. It's
Hmm.
really about increasing our awareness,
Hmm.
because the more awareness that we have of the way that we are, the more choice that we have.
Hmm.
And it's really about choosing where we want to live from.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Harmony, for that. I've recently just started a new segment for Back to Basics, and I wanted to ask you a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, is there any book that you are reading would, I don't know, whatever you're interested in? It could be mystery, it could be anything for that matter, or even relationships for that matter.
Mhm.
Do you have anything that you want to share to others?
Yeah, there's a book that I love. I read it actually very frequently, and I assign it to my students. It's called Healing Developmental Trauma. And I know that the title might not sound that exciting to read, but it really maps out so beautifully the way that we are shaped in response to the way our primary caregivers treat us. And I think it's the most illuminating book that's been written in my field in a long time.
Yeah, wow. That's crazy. I mean, I'm gonna go and read that book. I'm gonna go and grab it and see if there's a library has it too. Uh,
Hmm.
Thank you again for Harmony for explaining that. Before you leave today, I just have one quick question. If people have not been married yet and they're looking for the right person,
Hmm.
is it okay to be single? Because even though that you don't want to be alone when you grow old, right? So I
Hmm.
mean, that's what they say. Do you
Hmm.
think it's okay to do that from a male's point of view or female? Or I don't think it kind of matters now, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think being single is such a beautiful opportunity um, to have spaciousness in one's life and to explore in and of themselves what feels good to them, right? There's not a lot of negotiating or compromise or energy going out to other people.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that a lot of people choose that as the path to honor themselves.
Hmm.
And I think that 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 if they're not denying like a longing or an impulse inside of themselves and is truly honoring themselves, um, I think that that's beautiful. And I also do want to say that we are social beings,
Hmm.
right? We have biologically based core needs that drive us for connection.
Hmm.
And so I would just want to make sure that there are other outlets for
Hmm.
touch and for emotional intimacy and communication, because that's just really good medicine for the soul.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again for Harmony for explaining that. And before you leave today from the show, do you have any last words to all my listeners and my viewers? And how was your journey on Back to Basics too? On top of that.
Yeah, I would like to say to your viewers that wherever they're at in their lives is exactly where they need to be. That when I'm talking about alignment, I'm not talking about being different or changing themselves. I'm really talking about being more of who they really are,
Hmm.
and being really lit up about being alive. And so, yeah, being here with you has been really delightful. I feel challenged is the word, like challenged to like speak what is true for me here, and I love that. So thank you for the space and the time.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. The honor is all mine. Thank you so much, Harmony, for coming here and making this brighter for me and everyone whoever is listening here. And hopefully we'll get a Harmony 2.0 next time on Back to Basics. It's a pleasure speaking with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. So, guys, we spoke with Harmony today, and we talked about the relationships, didn't we? And we talked about a whole bunch of details. And it's not a bad thing that if you're alone. I mean, that's what she said too. So think about when you do get married, think about when you get into a relationship, and think about when you're going to be alone. It's not a bad thing. We're still humans at the end of the day. Now, as usual, as always, there is a quote of the day, and hopefully Harmony will like the quote. And the quote is, "A relationship where you can be weird together is the best choice." So, guys, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care. God bless. Keep on commenting on all my episodes because it does make me stronger day by day, week by week, because we do release every day. And there are three things, including this episode, makes it a hit for me, that is, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care. God bless. And I will see you next time on Back to Basics. Take care. Next week's episode on Back to Basics.
I mean, that's the stereotype. Why wouldn't I think those things?
Yeah.
Now that I'm in it, I see that it is so much more than what people think it is. And it's so much easier to do than people think it is. Meditation doesn't have to be sitting quietly in a corner. I mean, actually, yoga, being on the mat, that's a moving meditation. Taking your dog for a walk, that's a moving meditation. And so, people don't give things that they do